A lot of people ask about the First Nations and First Nations peoples. There's a few reasons why we're using it instead of Indigenous and instead of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. Indigenous has a lot of baggage associated with it. We all know that. You know, a lot of people, myself included, have a whole lot of issues with the word Indigenous. It's not a great term to use. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander is great, but again, it doesn't reflect the fact that there are hundreds of nations in Australia, and First Nations privileges that. It recognises the diversity, but it does something more than that, and that's that it actually starts to talk about what we mean on the international stage. And so it starts to connect us up with First Nations in other countries, and it allows us to be able to have that discussion in that space, and we have a right to. Everything that we do should be something that First Nations peoples want and that is going to help us in being able to move forward and be, and have the work that we want to do be reflected in the education area, across creative industries and across this livelihood zone. The International has been a really big part of the work that we've done anyway, but where international collaboration really matters for us is, if you've got a community of practice, you've got a group of people who are working in an area, and there aren't any examples of what works here in Australia, we want to hear about what's happened internationally. We want to be able to use that as evidence to say, okay, if we look at somewhere like the Mashantucket Pequot and we look at them setting up a museum, we want to be able to do something like that. And if we can't look here to see something of that scale, we want to be able to look somewhere else and say, well, why not? And what can we learn from the processes that they've done? To not just save ourselves some time with it, but to actually build on this idea of what it means to be First Nations and to have some relying on one another, but also to really honour the work that these other communities have done.